Hello, thanks for joining us today. My name's Dan Norman, I'm Specification Advisor at OBEX. Today's focus for this webinar is the Building Safety Act and how that impacts us and the industry. In today's webinar, we're going to cover off the following points: accountability, routes to compliance, who this applies to, that's the Building Safety Act, who it applies to, what is changing, so the processes and so on that we're going to go through as a result of the Building Safety Act, who takes final responsibility, and then we finish off with a final thank you. Accountability. We use the Swiss cheese model to demonstrate this because it is multi-layered. You may have seen this illustration before, but it is a good representation of the multiple layers of responsibility and process that we go through in the construction industry to make decisions and ultimately, finally, deliver buildings. It's important to understand how this works and what this demonstrates. So we've got the layers, which can be clearly seen there, and then the holes are the weaknesses. So what we need to do is we need to have as many layers in that process as possible in order to hopefully plug those holes or to catch those weaknesses before they get right through to the end result. It is a fairly foolproof system, but it does, as I say, it does illustrate the Building Safety Act and what it's trying to achieve very well. So the responsibility of that change. The change is our responsibility. It's the responsibility of the industry. We probably know that. We get told it a lot. We hear it a lot. We see it a lot. And that's fair. But it is really time that we took responsibility for that change. So that's what the Building Safety Act is trying to do. It's trying to make us, or it will make us, or it is making us more accountable by putting us through process in order to make sure that we understand where our responsibilities sit at every stage of the process. So this quote here from Dame Judith Hackett, I liked in particular. My bit in the building process is only small, so it really doesn't apply to me. We hear that quite a lot, especially with some of the products that we supply. Oh, it's a drop in the bucket, and you look at the overall size of the project or the size of the facade. But every single one of these layers matter because none of them will ever be perfect. So we're not dealing with a perfect scenario. Buildings are not built as the drawing. We know that. It is part of the industry. So we need to make sure we cover these things off. But the more layers of protection you have, the greater the assurance for the building as a whole. So if we have these stages, we have these layers of protection, we have these layers of responsibility that we are closing off at each a relevant point, we are far more likely to end up with a building which is safe and compliant than we have done previously. Routes to compliance. Now, this is an interesting one because what it says here is that the route to compliance hasn't changed. That was quite an eye-opener to me and made me think. So they haven't changed. We know they haven't changed. What has changed is the procedure to make sure that we meet the relevant requirements of the regulations, and we now need to be able to demonstrate how we met them. So that is a reference to, I believe, to the golden thread and the gateways. So the Building Safety Act is driving more rigorousness in the whole process of design and pre-construction throughout the build. Now, we see that in Gateway 2. So we have to submit the design to the building safety regulator and demonstrate, show the decisions we've made at every stage of the process, including the materials and products that we've included in that design, why we've made that decision, and how that impacts compliance or otherwise. So an example of the functional requirement of the regulations we've got there. This is one that we know well. It's all to do with Regulation 7. External walls of the building shall adequately resist the spread of fire over the walls. You might say, well, that's quite vague. It is vague, but it is a functional requirement of the regs, and we need to make sure that we know those because they haven't changed. As I say, what's changed is the procedure in order that will carry us through this process and deliver a safe, compliant building. So who this applies to? The new regime applies to all designers and contractors carrying out work that is subject to the building regulations. For an example, if I'm a designer or I'm a client and I decide to take on the design work myself because I can't find a designer that I can work with or whatever, in the past, we probably would have been able to get away with that. We probably would have done that in certain parts of the industry. Right, we're now going to have an in-house design team, whatever it might be. If I am doing that, if I take that step, I'm obliged to comply with competency requirements and all due process. So we have to be very, very careful about what we do and how we do it. And certainly how far, we have to be absolutely clear about how far our PI goes, how far our involvement goes, how far I can comment, how far I can advise. All of these things that we do, and maybe we do them as part of our normal daily life at work. As a manufacturer, we might be helping, assisting and advising our customers. Our customers are facade contractors typically. We have to be very, very careful that we don't overstep our remit, because if we go into an area that could be deemed as a design, then that is us stepping outside of our remit and we come into areas where we're actually not competent to be in. So we need to be very clear and understand clearly where we sit in the process, where we start and where we stop. So just wanted to cover off some specific roles, if you like, that we know about. So specification, how will this play out? We don't know in reality, but we are expecting to see much earlier engagement from main contractors in design, or do not see, we will see, but how else will a design get through Gateway 2 if the main contractor is not involved? I don't know. Maybe we'll see more traditional contracts, but we'll see as time goes on. Architects will be principal designers in some cases, most cases, but the point here is we need to know. So we need to know if we are principal designers or not, because the principal designer carries a lot of liability and obviously needs to demonstrate that they've met the requirements of the regs at Gateway 2. And we will, and we'll need to be more specific. So architects in specification will need to be more specific about products or similar approved, and wording like that is likely. We've been given a bit of advice on that, and it's likely to become irrelevant, and certainly we may not see that going forward. Performance specs is another one where product is not actually stated. We've been told that they're expecting to see less of that because they want to know exactly, and when I say they, I mean the building safety regulator will want to know exactly what product is being specified. So leads on to manufacturers, because as manufacturers we are responsible. So OBEX is a manufacturer. We are responsible to make sure that we have adequate testing, that the testing is transparent, and also that testing is available. The test reports are available for the industry to use, because the building safety regulator will want to know exactly what product is being used. They will want to make sure that that product is fit for purpose, especially around fire and so on. So for us in the facade industry, EN 13501-1 is a key test and obviously a requirement. So they will look into that. So Dame Judith Hackett said recently that she regrets not having the time to review and investigate products and manufacturers in the Grenfell review. I thought that was quite striking. She has done a lot. That's been a very wide-ranging investigation and review, but maybe there's more to come with products. That brings us on to the OPSS, Office of Product Safety Standards. We know that they are conducting, under the Building Safety Regulator, they are conducting review and they're testing fire classified facade membranes specifically to check the stated fire classification is correct and factual. So it's not just down to what a manufacturer puts in his literature. It is now going to be proven or being tested and looked into and investigated independently by the OPSS to make sure that what we state is absolutely factual. So that leads us on to what is changing. Well, something that's talked about a lot in the industry, D&B contracts, design and build contracts. It will be interesting to see how that works out going forward. We don't really know. I think I might have mentioned this earlier, but will it be more traditional contracts in the light of Gateway 2? We don't know, but we will certainly see as time goes on. Product substitution is a big one, as I'm sure everyone would know. If a product is substituted, it must be a true substitute or equivalent. So we need to take note of this one and be careful, because I think the Building Safety Regulator is going to really hone in on this one because of the changes to the regulations and the requirement for fire classification. What we've learned as a manufacturer is that we can't just switch products. So what we're changing is what a product is manufactured from, the material that is used. That has big impacts on everything. So we're looking at products and we are now using products, supplying products that have never been used in the industry before for a particular application. You take EPDM. EPDM, we no longer sell for use on a high-rise residential building or a relevant building or an HRB. We're now using interface sealing membranes. These are manufactured from different materials. EPDM is a rubber, as we know. It's not compliant because it burns, it's combustible. We're using materials which do not burn, they're not combustible. However, they need to perform in terms of fit for purpose, in terms of water and air tightness, in exactly the same way. So if I'm switching a product, the Building Safety Regulator knows all of this. They're looking into it. So they're going to be very, very focused on this particular point. The other thing that is very important to understand, and I learned this when I looked into it recently, that Building Safety Regulator are now responsible for all building control. So the principles of the Building Safety Act apply to all buildings. This has come up from time to time because the Building Safety Act does say all buildings, and it makes people ask the question, well, is it still relevant buildings with a floor level above 18 metres, or is it all buildings? What is it? Well, I think the point here is that they wanted to make us aware that we need to build safe buildings by default. So it's not just relevant buildings, it's not just HRBs, it's all buildings. I think it's part of the drive to change the culture, change our thinking. So am I doing what's safe? Am I doing what's correct? Am I doing what's right? Irrespective of whether it's a high-rise building or not. It doesn't mean that we've got to change everything and go with fire classified products for all of our buildings. It's just the process and the thinking that they want to change. We talk about the spirit of the regulations. I think this is a good demonstration of that, or a good example of that, in that the way they're going to change the culture is by changing the way we think about building and what we do. Who takes final responsibility? In conclusion, what we are seeing, or the feedback that we are getting, is that the changes to the regulations in the Building Safety Act is already making a difference. And we're seeing that in the quality of design work that's coming through from designers and architects and subcontractors. So it is having a positive effect. People are more conscious of this process that we're now going to go through, and that decisions are under scrutiny, which is good. It's positive. It's encouraging, I guess, and we all play our part in that. So we all need to take some encouragement from that. As a manufacturer, we're trying to be more, and we are making sure that we are more transparent. We always have tried to test to the worst case scenario, and we're trying to engage as much as we can, maybe more if we need to, with the industry to test in accordance with the need and requirements. So what we mean by the need and the requirements is we don't necessarily know all of the needs and all the requirements. So you might have a requirement which is regulatory, so we've got to test to this, but then there also might be another element of a scenario which is a need or a like to have, or an area where statutory or regular testing doesn't cover. If you take a through-wall situation, most through-wall fire tests are done without penetrations, without windows and doors openings and so on. So it's things like that that manufacturers like ourselves can take on board. We can engage with the industry to try and make sure that our testing includes as much of the real life on-site scenarios as possible, within reason. Testing's expensive, but at the end of the day, we've all got to play our part, and that's one part that we can play. Can't emphasize enough transparency. There is not enough transparency in the industry from manufacturers, especially in terms of testing and so on, compliance. So that is something that we can all work on and make sure that everything we're doing is transparent. When I say transparent, it could be misleading. So statements we make as manufacturers, things that we state, so this product will do this, or the wording of some literature might imply something. What does it actually mean? We need to be much more clear on that. So thank you for joining this afternoon. I just wanted to do a bit of a recap and a final conclusion. So this rethink, reset, and refocus our responsibilities is something which I heard recently. I thought that was really, really good. It's quite powerful. I suppose it's like this in many industries, but in the construction industry, we do what we've always done typically. The status quo very much reigns and holds the floor. But we need to rethink. That will require us to reset, because we've got to adjust to different processes, and we must refocus ourselves onto our responsibilities, where our responsibilities start and stop, because we are all responsible. If we're part of the construction process, we all carry a certain amount of responsibility. On regulations, we don't have everything we need, but we do need to concentrate on what we have. That was something that was said recently in a webinar, that yes, we know things are not perfect. The regulations are unclear. There's areas that we'd love to have, secondary legislation on. But if we continue to wait for secondary legislation, we really are missing the point. And that was something that Dame Judith said. And that's what I've put there. Those who continue to wait for further detail in secondary legislation are missing the point in a big way. I think really saying two things there. One, I suppose, is the obvious, which is clearly stated there, that we shouldn't wait for secondary legislation. But the other thing is that, look, guys, it's down to you. It's down to you as an industry. Bite the bullet, make the changes, rethink, reset, refocus. Thank you for joining this webinar today. We really appreciate your time.